Growing up, we are told that we'll be disliked if we boast. Show off, karne wali ladki. Nobody's gonna like. My dad used to always push me to be very ambitious. Used to, I remember this thing used to tell me as a kid, like, गिरते हैं शह सवारी मैदानी जंग में वो तिल्फ क्या गिरेंगे जो घुटनों के बल चलते हैं. Women put in 6 times more hours of unpaid labor, which is, domestic chores, compared to men. Speaking sexist statements in a formal conversation happens very rarely today, luckily. Today is about 2% to women-founded companies. If there's a woman and a male co-founders, then it's about 10 to 12%. Khol pank tere e parinda, abhi उड़ान बाकी है. ज़मीन नहीं है मंजिल तेरी, अभी पूरा आसमान बाकी है.
Hi everyone, this is Avinash Lohana and you're watching Pinkvilla. My guest today is popularly known as a shark, but when you meet her in person, she's also very relatable, funny and extremely inspiring. Whenever I see her, I feel all is well, all is well. Joining us on Woman of Season 4 today is the very admirable Vineeta Singh. Hi Vineeta.
Thank you so much, and that was below the belt. The all is well part.
I'm sure everyone who follows you will get this.
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, season 2 mein people are talking less about it, but season 1, that was all that everybody spoke about. All is well.
Yeah. But I must compliment you, Vineeta. It's a lot of seasoned celebrities also who've been actors for very long took a very long time to adjust to social media and the memes and what comes along, but you did it so hands-on, especially with this meme. So kudos to you for that. And I also want to start our conversation from there. Okay. When we met the last time, I remember you told me that you Google yourself very often.
No, I don't. Aaj sari poll khulne wale ho.
Because your dad has a Wikipedia page and you didn't. But while researching for this interview, I realized you have a Wikipedia page now. Congratulations for it. How important is social media presence for you as an entrepreneur, Vineeta? That's first thing. And when did you realize that it's important to be out there?
Firstly, I used to joke about it. I think I would have joked about it, saying that in my family, there's only one person who has a Wikipedia page, and that's not me. Yeah. That's my father. And but wo aise hota hai na, they say when you want something, the universe conspires.
Yes.
So I think in our conversation, I had mentioned this for the first time, and universe conspired. So I think people saw that interview and then they took it as a challenge. And I got pictures from people saying that we are putting up a Wikipedia on social, saying that my kids have taken this project on to make a Wikipedia page, and so as of now I guess there is a Wikipedia page.
Is.
And that was I think when you Google, a lot of stuff comes.
Yes.
So it's fine whether you have a Wikipedia page or not.
Absolutely.
But I have realized over a period of time that it's important to have a voice. If when you have the opportunity to have a voice, it's important to use it. And so in my own journey, there were 2 factors that played in a way that I never really thought about putting my own voice out there. One was, of course, being a woman. I think when you meet women in general, there is growing up, we are told that we'll be disliked if we boast. Show off, karne wali ladki, nobody's gonna like, right?
Yeah.
So, and women are somehow, they grow up optimizing for likability, which is why talking about what they've done, their achievements, is something that women rarely do. And even now, if you go into like conversations talking about say getting a raise or internal advocacy within the organization about the work that they've done, there's a huge difference between how men do this and how women do this, and women will always play down their achievements. I was one of those who said that my work will talk for itself. What I accomplish will talk for itself. I will not go out there and talk about what I've done. And secondly, I was, my dad's professor.
Yes.
And he came from this extreme school of thought where, and that's how academicians are,
Yes.
they look down upon this whole social media, frivolous world, and, they talk about that my research should really be the only thing that I'm known for, and not my opinions and not my pictures or videos. So I think for me, both of these factors growing up had a huge influence on how I thought about self-advocacy. And but what happened, and I was married to somebody who has the exact opposite view, and he grew up like using social media and using his voice well, and he always spoke about the fact that if you do good work, it's important to talk about it, because that really amplifies the power of the output.
Yeah.
And so Kaushik would often joke that jangar mein mor nacha kisne dekha, if you don't talk about it.
So true.
And so first time during the lockdown, actually I started posting on social, and it was coming more from a need to have an adult conversation, because I had 2 children who were at that time 2 and 5.
Yeah.
And we were locked up at home. In office, you would typically end up spending like 12 hours with other adults, which wasn't happening. I mean, you had your Zoom calls,
Correct.
but beyond the point, you felt that urge to voice opinions. And so I took to, that's when I took to Twitter and Instagram, and I started posting. And I realized that, especially being in a consumer business and being a leader, it started echoing with a lot of people at 2 levels. One was that there were other people who saw my stories as either something to learn from or an inspiration, and for women especially, there's a dearth of role models. And second is, as a consumer brand, just having a voice brought authenticity. So there is of course a lot of the trolling and the negatives that you must be knowing about on social media, which you're talking about, and everybody goes through that. There will always be that the voice that criticizes, the voice that it has too much emphasis going on the way you look, on things like that. But as long as you are able to focus on the good stuff, and you're able to focus on the privilege and the opportunity that you have to inspire, rather than let that criticism deter you from what your mission is. I think social media can be very powerful.
No, that's the mission of this conversation also, Vineeta, that we are here, we want to ignore the negatives, we are here to celebrate you and your journey. But during your answer, you also mentioned your story, and your journey as an entrepreneur is also very interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a conversation with a professor at 17 that changed things. What was this conversation?
So when I was 17, I was actually headed to IIT Madras for the first time, and I, on the flight, at that time you didn't know people because there was no social media. So I just overheard somebody say that I teach at IIT Madras, and I swapped seats with the person sitting next to him and went and sat next to him, and I went and told him that I'm just joining the BTech batch at IIT Madras. And then he told me that, oh, okay, which branch? And I said electrical, and he's like, oh, I head the electrical engineering department. And that's when it hit me that this professor is someone who's really known to be, very strict, and he, the electrical engineering department at that time at IIT Madras was the most infamous department, because the highest number of people would fail in that department, and it was very clear that he was the person who was, putting the bar very high for engineers, ensuring that only the best ones would pass. And so when I realized it's him, I actually froze, because I wasn't ready for what would happen over the next 2 hours, 45 minutes. I mean, that's how long the Delhi-Chennai flight is. And he asked me a lot of questions on electrical engineering, from analog versus digital, batao, how does a tube light work, and all of those things. And I remember I was very stressed that day that, what did I could have like just flown peacefully, sitting in my place, and I walked up, and that's how you think about, like, when you take on any opportunity, right, you go and try doing something first, like something will go wrong, and you always tell yourself, I could have been living my life peacefully. Why did I have the kida to go out of my way to put myself into trouble? And that's exactly the emotion I went through. And then when you get past that, then something wonderful always comes out. I believe that when you put yourself out there, it's hard at first, but then something amazing comes out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in that conversation. So he asked me, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? So I said, I really want to, contribute to the world, leave an impact, blah, blah. He said, I've heard all of this nonsense. Like, what do you really want? Like, what do you really, want out of your career? And I genuinely at that time realized that I hadn't really thought about, because all my life I'd been, all of us, right? Doctor बनना है, engineer, अच्छा doctor नहीं बनना है तो engineer, right? Engineer बनना है तो IIT जाना है तो, so in that entire, you never think about what you want, because all those conversations are driven by whatever is the right thing to do for your, what your parents want, what your peers are doing. And that's how I had ended up in that with that engineering degree. And I hadn't thought about this question. And then when I started thinking about it, I said, I want to be rich. And then he said that if you really want to be rich, like the greatest rewards come from the greatest risks. So you should consider being an entrepreneur. And at that time was the first time that I actually, heard that word. And then he said that, honestly, I mean, I'd heard the word, but I never heard of it in my context.
Sure.
Like, that this could be one of those career options, because the gamut of career options were what, your parents gave you.
Yeah.
And in my, distant family also, there was nobody who was an entrepreneur. And then he said that, if you become an entrepreneur, you will realize that you may not enjoy so much being rich, but you love creating stuff. So the whole idea that you have the opportunity to build a legacy, to create something, and with a lot of risk, there is also a chance that you can become rich. It sounded like a massively attractive option. So I went back and did what I do, which is, I bought all the books of all the amazing entrepreneurs. I read up everybody's stories, and from Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, and Howard Schultz. And then I decided that, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know when and how, but someday I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I remember at that time at IIT itself, I started thinking about, what kind of businesses. And, that time there were these floods in Chennai. So we were working with these NGOs to support them. And I remember they were talking about millet farmers, going through very tough times, and there were a lot of suicides. So I started thinking about, okay, can I create a company that makes millet biscuits that helps these farmers as well as, becomes a brand. So all those things before I was still 20.
Yeah.
Of course, none of that materialized, but I remember that was probably the first time that I really thought about this, and then after that there was no looking back.
How did your parents react? Because they are academics, and I'm sure they must be distraught when you rejected that job offer after MBA, right?
Yes. So, my dad actually came from very humble beginnings, and so he was very poor growing up. He had lost both his parents, and for him, the fact that he did a PhD and then he got a job in AIMS, and after that he had he was able to afford a house and car, and it was a big deal. So for him, a safe government career was one of those options that got him out of poverty.
Yeah.
And so obviously their reaction was that it is important to have a career that is safe. When you decide to start up, nobody knows how that's going to go. And I think as parents, we are the kind of risk that we take with our lives, we don't want our kids to take, right?
Yeah,
because we are very protective of them.
Correct.
So of course my parents thought that it was a bad idea. I negotiated with them and I told them that just give me 2 years. If in 2 years I don't end up earning the amount that I'd given up as a salary, then I'll decide to take up a job. And I'll figure out a way to get a job. So I did this 2-year deal with them. After that, probably took more than 15 years to get there. But somehow, once you start on that journey, then you just cannot not be an entrepreneur. And somehow those two years karke, it reached a point where my parents sort of said that, okay, this is what makes her happy. And, this is what makes her feel like she has some purpose in her life. So let her do, and they, got very supportive. So through all those financial distress that you go through as an entrepreneur, they were actually very supportive. They actually helped me out with, paying for the small things. They sponsored my entire wedding. They would sometimes come to my house and see the situation and be sponsored, buy these small things to
Amazing.
ensure that, you know, I didn't have like I didn't feel like I was borrowing money from them, but they helped me out a lot. So I feel that they came to terms with it, and I wasn't ready for what a long, arduous, hard journey entrepreneurship is.
Yeah.
And which is why I did that 2-year deal with them. And of course, you only figure it out once you get on the road how tough it is. But that's the beauty of it, that, you know, once you find out what you're excited about building, then even when it gets tough, you figure out courage to stay the course.
Yeah.
And that's how it all turned out.
No one like parents, na?
Yeah. They're amazing.
You shifted to Mumbai at a very early age. What was those initial days like?
So Mumbai, I moved with my first startup at 23, and it was, I think, hard because at that time I had to really figure out a way to live independently, which means includes renting a house and, like, you know, getting your help in place and all of that at like the first salary of 10,000, which then became 25,000, which then eventually became 50,000, which then seemed like a luxury. But that the first few months were really very hard. And interestingly, I moved after graduation, which happens in like March, April. So I moved in July, which is probably the worst time anybody can choose to move to Mumbai, because of like the next 2-3 months is like monsoon, and there's like seepage in the house, and there's, you know, getting a rickshaw is so hard. You have to walk like a kilometer before, like, you know, you get rejections by 100 rickshaw drivers. I think before all the 100 VC rejections, I got 100 rickshaw driver rejections in my own journey. And I used to think, you know, really like, what is this city and why? And I grew up in Delhi, right? And in the AIMS campus, where the houses used to be big, lawn hota tha. Matlab, it was a very different kind of, roads were wide, traffic used to move fast. There was, you know, probably a month-long monsoon, but it used to like just come and go. So it was a bit of a shocker. But there was that one part of Mumbai, which is amazing people, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea that I could run at like 3-4 a.m. without worrying about my safety.
Yeah.
The idea that, you know, I didn't have to like be back home by 10 o'clock at night if I'm going out with my friends because of the just, you know, what's going to happen. All of that and just people helping out. Like, I've had times where I'm driving alone on the road and 1 a.m. and the car, you know, gets stuck in some manhole. People stop in the middle of rain and help you pull the car out.
Yes.
I mean, those are unthinkable anywhere else in the world, I feel.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the city for its people. And I also think that Mumbai is just like an entrepreneur. Mumbai is also a very unstoppable city. No matter what crisis happens, people show up next morning for whatever it is their job is. And that's what an entrepreneur's life also is, right? You know, go through like the worst, like, failure, rejection, worst day of your life, but next day 5 a.m. you have to show up for your customers.
I agree.
And that, I feel, is which is why I feel it's a great city to build. It's a great city to become an entrepreneur, because once you know, are able to afford some, you know, like to have an office that's close to your house, and you don't have to struggle with all the traffic, then life is amazing in Mumbai. So now I love the city, but the first 3-4 months, of course, was hard because I was a hardcore Delhi grown girl. So,
but Vineeta, those days जब बारिश में छत से पानी टपक रहा है और इनिशियल डेज टफ है, तब सेल्फ डाउट आता है कि यार गलत डिसीजन है, सही डिसीजन है. लेट मी IIT graduate plus MBA, I could have done something better. Does this come to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, अभी तक मुझे लोग बोलते हैं कि क्या आपने IIT की सीट वेस्ट कर दी, because you know, you never actually ended up. I feel that, you know, when you've grown up having things easy, you're not used to failure.
Yeah.
And I went through extreme self-doubt. Of course, the one thing is that growing up, my dad used to always push me to be very ambitious. He used to, you know, I remember this thing he used to tell me as a kid, like, गिरते हैं शहसवारी मैदानी जंग में वो तिल्फ क्या गिरेंगे जो घुटनों के बल चलते हैं. So this whole thing around thinking big, trying, was something that I, you know, always wanted to do, and I'd, you know, grown up with that inspiration from my father. But when you have your first encounters with those spectacular failures, When my first startup didn't get funding, then the second startup I had to move out of. And before Sugar started, I think that was probably the lowest point, because that was the first time after 5 years of trying to be an entrepreneur that I started questioning the fact that I'm probably not meant to be an entrepreneur. And then I started thinking about, like I said, I used to read all of these books. Any entrepreneur who, had a book, I would have read it to understand what was their story. And all of these books were about these amazingly visionary men.
Yeah.
Right? Steve Jobs, Branson, Howard Schultz, like I mentioned. And I used to compare myself and realize that I am not this visionary genius who can walk into a room and inspire like hundreds of people to get excited about some new technology. I am, average at selling, and I'm obviously smarter than average because I did get through an IIT or an IIM, but and I work very hard. But is that enough? Was the doubt that I had. And there is fundamentally a way in which women entrepreneurs also are different, but there weren't these books around women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Probably the first book that I read of a woman entrepreneur was in 2016. There was a entrepreneur called Sophia Amoruso, founder of Nasty Gal.
Yes.
Her book had come out, but before 2016 I'd never read a book about a woman entrepreneur, right? So it just felt that I was probably cheating the world into believing that I have the ability to be an entrepreneur, and it was the wrong career choice. And I made the worst decision of my life by giving up that job to start up. And maybe I should think about going back to taking up a job. And so those months of self-doubt were very hard. I feel that somehow that's the time when I actually took to running. And found somewhere else where I could get some self-esteem, because you need something to feel proud of yourself about. And that's where I started like doing ultra marathons and triathlons to really get some of that self-esteem back. Luckily, it was also, a time that I got married. I, started thinking about my family. So there were other things that, made me feel at peace with the void that I was feeling. But it was hard. I won't say it wasn't hard. Somehow I found the courage to not give up and try one more time. And for me, it was like this last attempt that agar ab ye nahi chala, to kuch nahi hoga. And the irony is कि नहीं चला. But from Fab Bag, jo nahi chala, Sugar came out, which then became big. But I'm just, that the one thing that I told myself is, if this doesn't work, I'm going back to my job. And that also did. So, but Sugar came out of that, and there was no way Sugar would have happened had it not been for Fab Bag. So I think everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
Your Twitter bio very interestingly calls you CEO, Sugar, mom, running, cycling, swimming person, in that order. Now the first two roles. Now the first two roles of a CEO and a mom are very, very demanding. Do they overlap, and how do you manage that?
So very demanding, I agree. It is hard. It's hard for everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or you're doing, any job. It's, being a mother and doing anything else is hard. Being a mother in itself is also hard. But I feel that I think that like when I was few years back, there used to be this concept that after Indra Nooyi made the statement that women cannot have it all. And then it went around to saying that women can have it all, but not at the same time. I feel that a lot of times this whole concept of having it all and like a expectation of what a perfect life for a woman looks like, all of those are concepts that are forced on us and that put a lot of pressure of how scary this is going to be. I never thought about it that way, saying that okay, I'm going to try having a balance. I just thought that I am going to be somebody who does what she loves. And growing up, I had a very ambitious father, so I had that ambitious gene in me. And I had a mother who was a working woman, but who also was very family first. So she would, like show up for all our family events, help everybody out in their weddings. She would, ensure that she would spend time with me before my exams. So I I knew that I would be an ambitious family first person, and I can, this matters to me.
Even today?
Yes, absolutely. I think about like I can give up everything for my family, and it's something that like really centers me, and that's the most important thing. But yes, I'm also very ambitious, so I love the part of me where I am creating stuff, being like leading the team, being a CEO, and I love spending time with my children as a mother. And I don't try to, put them all in one equation saying that both should be equal at every point. There are times where work is stressful. There are times where you have to spend, drop everything and show up for your kids.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't have any mathematical equation that you're trying to fit into and fit your life into, I think you find ways of doing everything, but just that you need a lot of help.
Yeah.
And it's important to ask for help, to take all the help. And luckily, I have had my mom come in and help me. So my eldest son is actually as old as Sugar. So that phase was, of course, very, very hard. But I knew that I have to be a mom. So I didn't think twice before deciding to go ahead and have a child. But my mom showed up for me, and she helped me out for the first 1 year with my eldest son. So I think if women have a very strong instinct. We just need to follow it and do what's right by us. Sometimes it means taking a career break and focusing on your family first. Sometimes it means balancing both. I don't strive for perfection in either, and I'm okay to fail in both. And I just follow my heart, and that helps me with, of course, a lot of help from family get by.
Yeah. I asked you this question, but I also want to apologize for asking this question because we don't often ask this question to men. But there's a reason why I asked you this question. Women manage both, of course, and some men go and contribute, but some men also go out and say, "Yaar, ye to karna padta hai." What has been your foundation of marriage with Kaushik, and how do you all put in on equal footing?
Yeah. So, firstly, in interviews, when somebody asks me how do you, and doesn't ask the male founders, I don't mind that at all, because I feel that there is a lot of fear that like young women are also being put through about how will they manage, and which is
that's
why
my concern.
So and which is why I feel that stories help, and it is important, because like I said that I didn't have a role model till I was till 2015-16 when I started reading about women entrepreneurs. I feel that women need those role models, because you can only be what you see. So which is why I think it's an important question, and it's fine if it's not asked so much to men. I only have a problem when venture capitalists ask this question to women and not to men. So not so much when I'm speaking to a journalist, because I feel that that any part of my story which is helping another woman, I'm grateful for that. So coming to the question, so I think fundamentally there are like 3-4 challenges that a lot of women have, and based on a lot of conversations with my friends, I have figured this out. And the premise, of course, is that in a country like India, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation did some research, and they found out that women put in 6 times more hours of unpaid labor, which is domestic chores, compared to men. Now 6:1. And this also applied for women who were educated, women who were working. So it didn't matter if you were a postgraduate, you were still doing 6 times more. And they did this, and it's one of the highest in the world. And so the first, obviously, important conversation is to have at the time when you decide to get married, which is that, does my spouse think of me as, an equal, or is there an expectation which is different from what our marriage would come, and there is an expectation of it being 6:1, because I feel that for women it ends up becoming a huge career decision if they don't have a spouse who's as supportive as, say, somebody like a Kaushik is. Even if you have, and now I meet a lot of young men who say that they want to do more, right? They want to support their wives, they want to ensure that they are equal supporters, but they don't get how. You know,
Yeah.
they don't understand where to start. So I think there I figured 3-4 things. There are the 3-4 challenges beyond the obvious, which is that if you don't have even if you have a help and a support system, there are 3-4 challenges. There's one which is around decision making fatigue, right? Like things like खाना क्या बनाना है, to, you know, कि कौन सी help को employ करना है. That decision making fatigue is something that adds to a mental you know, load on women. Second is the general mental load of ensuring everything happens, which is like all the groceries have to be there, children taken care of, everything has to happen as per a certain routine. And that entire responsibility, like in a company, the responsibility of ensuring हर महीने salaries pay हो रही है, to the, you know, electricity bill pay हुआ है, to all of that is on the founder, right? So similarly, you are the woman of the house is responsible for that. The third is, of course, there's a lot of judgment that comes with, you know, this is how mothers should be, this is how women should be. So dealing with like the judgment and opinions of others. And fourth, I feel, is the guilt, which is like, you know, your own guilt that am I doing enough? Because women are fundamentally biologically wired to want to contribute more. They want to, if somebody is hurting, the woman is the first person to in the family to give up everything to make sure that becomes right? So those 3-4 things are where I feel that beyond the obvious, which is, you know, being an equal father, being an equal partner, I feel that men can come in, and that's the conversation I had with my husband, where I, you know, spoke to him about the fact that I am gonna feel guilty. So can you help me, you know, by telling me that I'm doing fine as a mother, because I'm going to have a lot of self-doubt. It's hard to go on a trip when you have a 6-month-old baby for 2 days, because, you know, work requires that, because that guilt will come. So can you help me out with that? I had a conversation about, you know, the judgment, saying that everybody tells me what to do. Nobody is telling you. So, you know, he would step into conversations where somebody would say that, you know, this is how you're supposed to do, that's how you're supposed to do. And he would step in and say that, you know, I'll do it. Like, take on some of that judgment and the opinion and the advice on himself. He would help with, you know, some of those decision making, the mental load, and consider those as also important tasks that we had to split. And I feel so grateful that I had somebody who thought that this was, you know, something that was important for this relationship to work. And I also felt proud of myself that I went and had that conversation and didn't hold it against him that, you know, this is obvious, because many times it's not obvious. The whole idea that khana kya banana hai, it comes naturally to the woman, it doesn't come to the man, so the woman will do it. Fine, you know, that's what I decide at my place. But the fact that this is one of those things that can lead to like a decision-making fatigue for the woman is a important conversation to have. So I feel that, you know, having that conversation rather than saying that ye aise hi hai, change nahi hoga, is important for women. And which is why I speak a lot about it. I mean, and I feel that like organizations kuch bhi kar le to bring more women into workforce, it's not going to happen unless their spouses are showing up for them. And which is why I always, you know, talk about all these incredible spouses, because I feel that they should be the ones who are role models for young boys out there.
No, you rightly said, the line khana kya banana hai may sound to some viewers very basic, but it's true, you know, it's something that husband and wife experience. And I can tell you from my personal experience, so we also had this conversation in our household of how to be on equal footing with each other. I read in an interview that once a VC told you that you'll get funding only when your husband puts in equal time in your company. This is sexist and this is very discriminating. Did it hamper you at that point in time? Did it affect your confidence? And does it happen even today?
So, no, it doesn't. Speaking sexist statements in a formal conversation happens very rarely today, luckily, in both, you know, like within companies as well as in all these fundraising conversations, because a lot of this has got called out in the last 5-6 years and people are very careful. I think some of these things were, you know, it just like this stereotyping was something that it didn't strike VCs. And so I think there's a lot that's changed in the last 10 years. This conversation was 10 years old. And of course, at that time, when you are like really struggling, then you hang on to anything that you get. So
Yeah.
rather than thinking that this is a sexist offensive statement, I saw it as an opportunity to, at least koi to kuch terms and condition pe kisi tarah to funding de raha hai.
हाँ.
So I didn't, I had, like, you have the luxury or the privilege to get offended by something when you can afford to walk out of it, right? When you are at that point where you can't afford to walk out of that conversation, then you just take what you get and move on, right?
But that's also wrong, taking advantage of somebody's situation, right?
But that is how it was 10 years back. I mean, 10 years back, it was like today, 2% of the capital goes to women-funded, women-run companies. Imagine 10 years back, it was almost zero. So it was unheard of.
But only 2% today.
Today is about 2% to women-founded companies. If there's a woman and a male co-founders, then it's about 10 to 12%. But
Okay.
it's still very, very low,
It
right?
is.
Because you're talking about almost 85 to 90% going to solo male founders, like only male founder or 2 male founders or 3 male founders kind of businesses, which is really low.
Horrible.
Yeah, but it is, so which is what tells you that still, like, the actual access to capital hasn't really improved. It has improved, but it hasn't significantly improved. The numbers are very bad. But the good thing is that the conversations are not sexist, are rarely sexist. I mean, you have to be really stupid to be sexist in 2023, where you can get called out on Twitter. But now we're waiting for the VCs to put their money where the mouth is. So
Yeah.
now they are saying that, they want to support. A lot of venture capitalists now have cohorts which are dedicated to women founders. They want to focus on that. Now we're waiting for the money to really come in. And I think that will take another decade for this number to go up from that 2 to 3% to even a 10% respectable number like that. And it's the problem really is that in the decision-making positions, venture capitalist firms are led all by men. Very, very few women, like 1 to 2% are women decision makers.
Yeah.
When your decision maker is a man, the chances of them investing, because they're still coming from those biases that they've seen in their own families where, probably their wives are, not working or not as ambitious. So that's the typecasting that happens. So I feel that there's a long way to go as far as, real change comes. But I'm grateful because it's a good start.
Yeah.
I feel that it will lead to like a change where at least in the next 10 years, I hope that at least 10 to 15% funding will go to, purely women-led companies.
Yeah.
Another, total 15-20% will go to women-men kind of companies, and then rest can be men, which
Yeah.
is still less, but it's much better than now.
Yeah, I agree. Last question.
Yeah.
What is your vision for women entrepreneurs in India which can make their 2% quota to 20% at least?
Yeah, I feel that, firstly, I feel that the next 2 decades, there are going to be a lot of women entrepreneurs. And I do believe that this 2% will become 20% because, like I said, 2015, no role models.
Yeah.
Right now, if you look at the female founder of a
Yeah.
startup who has the highest net worth, it's a woman. Not like the founder of a startup who has the highest net worth, actually a woman, Falguni Nair. Right?
Nykaa.
So, yeah, Nykaa. So, we've jumped from a time where, like, 8 years ago, there were 0 role models. So, there have been so many role models in whether it's tech, retail, brands, India, US. So, I think that has a superpower of really inspiring generations. And I feel that when I look at, like, even something like a Shark Tank, right? On Shark Tank last season, 48% of the pitchers were women.
Amazing.
And so many of them got funded, right? So when these, 8-year-old girls come and, talk to me about how they watch Shark Tank, they all say that, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. So suddenly women are ready to come out of that closet or, to bring their ambition out of the closet.
Yeah.
And they're going to be unstoppable. And I feel that also has India as a country can actually have, like that whole vision we have of our 5 trillion GDP. 800 billion out of that 5 trillion can actually come from just a 10% improvement in women's participation workforce, which is down to under 20% right now. Women-led companies are known to have more women in workforce. Like a Sugar has 70% women at our workforce, right? You have a company that's led by women, a woman founder, and you have a lot of women at workforce, right? So, and you know, you see the data, it's very clear. Now, these women who work at Sugar, they will eventually found their own businesses where they will hire more women. So, I feel that like women entrepreneurship, if it is supported, of course, with access to capital, because that's the one thing that's very hard for women, they're going to be unstoppable. I think women are just ready to break free, to be unstoppable. I was, you know, recently talking to the girls in my office and I was telling them that there is, you know, this thing that I read, Urja, खोल पंख तेरे ए परिंदा, अभी उड़ान बाकी है, ज़मीन नहीं है मंजिल तेरी, अभी पूरा आसमान बाकी है. So I think that's my vision for all the women entrepreneurs out there. And I'm sure they're going to be unstoppable.
Amazing. Can I tell you, Vineeta, you know, nothing makes me more happy than a good conversation. And when it's with someone like you, I'm so happy we did this first thing in the morning. Now I'm really charged up for my whole day and for the whole week as well. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring.
Thank you so much. And it was a lovely conversation. I think you were really well researched, which is why I think it was easy to have a, you know, like it seemed like I was talking to a friend who knew me. So,
thank you so much.
So if you like this video, please subscribe to Pinkvilla on YouTube.